This course, I will be covering HTML, showing you some demos. But before I do this, I would like to remind you of the roadmap that I tried to draw last time on the board. So in this course, we will see two sides of development, the front end and the back end. In the front end, we will see how we will develop a user interface, a web user interface, using HTML, CSS, JavaScript. Then we will go to the back end and see how we can read and write some data from files and database and give it to the client side. So you know, in web development, we have two sides, the client and the server. So this is the basic. Then we will go back to the front end and use more advanced libraries to help us build a more advanced user interface using Angular and Ionic. So this is in a brief, in one picture, what the course is all about. So we will start with the first skill or the first technology that will help us to build the client-side user interface, which is the HTML. So anyone can define what HTML is? Yes, please.
Hypertext markup language.
Yes.
It's used to do the skeleton of the website.
Okay.
The header, the body, and the whole thing.
Excellent.
You build on a CSS and JavaScript, so it's basically what makes the website.
Yeah.
And we started with
Very good. You know, a web page will be, or a web application will be, will have lots of web pages. And these web pages, we will create them using HTML. So HTML defines the logical structure of the page, the logical structure. Logical means it's not necessarily what you will see, the physical layout. It is the logical way. I will explain what this means. The physical layout or the way the page will look like and how it will be formatted, we don't do it in HTML. We do it in CSS, yes? So HTML defines what is the role of each element on the page, as I will explain shortly. So what I will explain here, I will give you the basics of HTML. In one session, we will cover all what you need to know. Remember, the 20% that you need to know to build 80% of scenarios, or to cover 80% of the scenarios. So HTML works very closely with CSS and JavaScript. So these three technologies, they work together to build the client side. And we will see shortly the role of each one. So the role of HTML is to define the logical structure of the page. The logical structure of the page is defined using HTML. Then we use CSS to style the page and to control the formatting and the presentation of the page. We use JavaScript to do some client-side interaction, to programmatically manipulate the page, such as doing some animations, doing some validation on the page. And we will also use HTML to display images and video files. So basically, these three technologies, they work together, and they are very much tightly integrated, but each one has a very clear role that it will play in our client-side development. Okay, so this is what an HTML page looks like. So it is a set of tags. I'm trying to record this presentation, but at the same time I want to use the board, so it's a bit restrictive. So a tag is basically some kind of text. You open a tag and you must close it. This is how you close it. And in here, there is some text that you put. So HTML is a set of tags. These tags that you put, the text that you put within these tags, is standardized. There is a standard. Like people have a set like this in a group, and they They define what these tags are. And each tag has a particular behave. It tells the browser what to do. Okay? So an HTML document must be within an HTML tag. So the root tag is HTML. And within this root tag, what we will find? Two parts. There is the head and there is the body of the page. So the head, what do we put in the head? Maybe the title, maybe some keywords that describe the content of the page. These keywords are mainly for search engines. They like to crawl those keywords that you put on the head. In the head, if you are using some CSS files, you refer to them in the head. We will see how to do that. If you are using some JavaScript files, you refer to them in the head. Then, the head, most of the head stuff, it's not visible to the user. It is more metadata. It's data about the page. Except the title, it will be visible to the user. The rest is not really visible to the user. What the user will see is what you put in the body of the page. So any content you put in the body of the page will be visible to the user. Okay, so this is an example for page metadata. When you see this word metadata, it means data about the page or information about the page. So in here I have the page title, I have some description, and I can have other stuff that we will see later on. This is an example of page content, what the user will see on the page. I put it within the body tag. In here, what I'm defining three headers. You know, an HTML is a document, similar to a Word document, as an example. When you write a Word document, especially if it's a large report, I hope you don't just keep writing text. At certain stage, you will do some structure of the document. Give the document some structure. You will say, this is a header, this is a subheader, this is a paragraph, this is a section, to make it easy to read and understand. You don't just keep writing text. You give it a structure. And it's very important to give your document a structure. And this is what HTML allows you to do. It allows you to mark up. You take a piece of content and you say, what is the role of this piece of content within the whole page? So for example, this heading 1, what is the role of this content is basically the main header of the page, the main header. And this is a subheader, and this is a subheader. And this is a paragraph, this is a paragraph. So you can think of it as kind of coming to the content and defining what the role of this content in the page. That's what HTML allows us to do. Is clear so far? Okay. This is yet another example. It's just to show you here. In the head of the document, I can refer to JavaScript that we will see later on, but I just want to show you what goes into the head of the document. I can also add style sheets. This is to format the document. We will see this in much more details. This is just to give you an overview. So this is a full page. It starts with HTML tag, and it has two major sections, the head section and the body section. The head section, you put data about the page, such as the title, the scripts, the style sheets that you are using on the page. And in the body, you put the content that you want to display to the user. Now, HTML is a big technology, okay? But before you dive into the details, it's very, very important. Any technology we will be covering, or any technology we will be covering, before you go into the details of how to do things, you should get an idea what you can do with it. What this HTML is all about, what we can do with it before we go into the how. at least you get a good understanding of what capabilities it offers you, and then gradually you will learn how to do each of these capabilities. Some of them might not be relevant immediately. Some of them could be part of the must know. Some of them you will learn later on. Okay, because this is too big. If you want just to spend, as I explained last time, the whole semester on HTML, you can if you wish. But we don't have that luxury. We will focus on the essential elements, and we need to move on to cover other aspects. Because HTML alone will not take you too far. You need all the elements, other elements I showed you in that picture, to build a realistic enterprise web application. Okay, so what do we use HTML for? The first thing is we define the logical structure of the page. What I mean by logical structure, you come to the page and you say, oh, by the way, this is a header. This is the menu, the navigation menu. This is the main content of the page. This is a footer. Within the main content, this is a head, this is a paragraph. So that's what the structure of the page. It's not like you write your page as one piece. You divide it into pieces. And you define what is the role of each piece. When you are doing this, what are you doing really? You're defining the structure of your page. Okay? So for example, when you're trying to write a report, you will say, okay, I will organize my report as abstract, introduction, and then the main body. In the main body, I will have 3 major sections, and then I will have a conclusion. So you define the structure, and then you go and put the content in that skeleton structure. So that's the first thing you can do with HTML. Second thing you can do is you can collect input from users. You can ask user to give you some input. How you do this in HTML? Using forms. So as a web developer, this is a must know and a must understand capability of HTML. This is part of the essential. You cannot, you must learn. This is very, very important as a web developer. Okay? Then, what else you can do with HTML? You can display data in a tabular format. You can display nice tables with rows and columns. This is very important for web developers. We will see how to do this. You can also show audio and video. It's very simple. It's not very important for us in this course, but just be aware of it. And there are some more advanced capabilities that we will not see in this course. You can draw things on the page. This is more for games and more advanced scenarios. You have something called a canvas, and you can draw inside this canvas. Okay? But we will not see this. It's clear, the capabilities? So this is my advice to you. Whenever before you dive into learning the details of a particular technology, try to find the key capabilities. At least now you know what it is, what it can do for you. And then you go into the details. Okay? Yes, please.
The last point, does it include like moving pictures on the page and moving animations?
No, we will see if we want to do some simple animations. We will see how to do that with JavaScript later on. This is more, you have basically a drawing area. You can draw lines, you can draw different graphs. Sorry?
Like paint.
Like paint, yes. This is more advanced, like you can use it for simple games on the browser and so on. Okay. I think there is a multimedia course. Those of you who took multimedia course, maybe you took this.
Yeah, we took Canvas.
Yes. So, but I haven't played with this much.
It's really fun. It's really fun. Simple and fun.
Yeah.
I think Canvas is what they use to when they make screensavers.
Yeah.
They built them on Canvas, and there's a program that allows you to take that HTML and basically put it as a background image for your desktop.
Yep. Yes. I haven't played with it much, but roughly I know you can draw graphs on them and so on. what we will focus, as I explained in this course, is on defining the structure of the page, collecting input, and tables. Those are the key capabilities, because remember, in this course, you learn how to become a web developer. As a web developer, these are the capabilities you need to understand and use. The others are more in the domain of web designers and multimedia developers. Okay, so the first skill that we have to know is how to define the page layout or the page structure. So this is very common structure you find in most pages. And this is the structure that most of our examples and our applications that we develop in this course, it will follow something similar to this. So when you go to a page, typically you find a header that has some introductory information. It might have a logo, okay? And typically after the header or within the header, you have some kind of navigation that will give you the menu items. You click to do some actions. Then you have the core of the page, the main content of the page, and the footer. You might have a footer. Usually it has a contact details, some important links to Facebook page of the organization or Twitter page of the organization. And then you might have a side box where they put some advertising for you, or maybe some alerts or some extra information. So most of the pages are have this kind of layout. Okay? So HTML, especially HTML5, because HTML went through many versions, but HTML5 was a major version of HTML. So in HTML5, new tags has been created to help you do this logical structure, to help you define this logical structure. So you create a page, and within the page, you typically have you use these tags to define the header, the navigation, the main body, if you happen to have some ads or some extra links on the side, and a footer. Okay? So, as I explained, the header, you put some introductory content and a logo, and typically navigation links. In the footer, you put information about copyright, author contact details, Facebook, Twitter. This is what typically people use. On the header, inside the header, typically you have a navigation bar to put your links. And okay. Now, developers don't use this very commonly. These article and section are not commonly used, but highly recommended. So you can put the main content of the page inside the tag called article. An article is the whole document, let's say an article. And within it, you can have sections. And within these sections, you can have headers and paragraphs. Okay? Now, let me give you an example. So now, the style we go with this, the coverage of the whole course, you will have the concepts, and then you will have associated examples that you need to kind of play with. First, you kind of run them, see what they do, and then go and see how they are done, and you can extend them, change them to your liking to really familiarize yourself. And then you will go to the lab and do some exercises that use these skills. So that's basically the style of the content that will be given to you. So you have slides, examples, and then labs where you will practice what we learn. Okay, so these are the basic HTML tags. So this is the first basic. So before you try to dig and see what this page is doing, you can first go and see the final look, what's in this page. So there are two ways you can do this. You can just hover over, put your mouse on this editor, and you will see different browsers. You click on any browser you wish to open the page on that browser. That's one way of doing it. The other way, you can right-click on the file and say Run, and it will open it in the browser. Okay? So This is basically what I have here. I have the basic HTML tags that developers and web designers use to create web pages. So, in web pages, we typically have links. Yes, you can see here these are links. So how do we create links in HTML? Which tag do we use? No, there is no, basically we have, yes, we have this A anchor tag, A tag. So we use this A tag to create a hyperlink. And the way we do so, let me maybe put it this way so it's much easier for you. So first of all, let me explain this div tag. This is just a part of the page. Division, yes. So it's a section of the page, let's say. It's a section of the page. We will see as developers, we really like this div because we can put multiple stuff in one div and we can give that div a name, an ID, and we can access it through JavaScript and play with it. We will see this later on. But for now, just keep it in mind that div is a container where you can put other elements. So in our case, this container, how many elements does it have? Inside it, one element, which is a hyperlink. So the way I create a hyperlink is I use the A tag. So just to show you. So this is the A tag. I open it and I close it. And then I need to supply to it a couple of properties. So a link has the address to which the browser will take you to when you click it. So where do you put this address? In a property called href. Okay? And then you can put here wherever. Like, let's say qu.edu. Sorry?
You can reference the page itself, right?
It can be an absolute page, an absolute address, which the full address, or it can be a relative address, which is a file, another file in the same project or in the same folder. Okay? And then here, the href will give you the address that the browser will go to when you click the link, but the text that the user will see will be inside the element. So you start the A element, and inside it you put the hyperlink. You put the text that that will be visible to the user. So for example, I will call it here QU website. Yeah. So basically, what I'm doing here, I'm defining a hyperlink. The user will see QU websites, and when I click, this is the link I will go to. Yeah.
Doctor,
Yes, please.
what does the A stand for? Before the href?
The A here.
Yeah.
I think it's an anchor. We call it anchor. Okay.
And it has types. Href is one type.
No. Good question. These are not types. These are attributes. So basically, HTML is made up of many tags. These tags have attributes that you use to provide inputs or provide parameters to these tags. So basically, to create a hyperlink, it makes sense to one of the parameters needed is the address that the browser will go to when you click the link. Yes. Well, how do you supply this address? You assign it to an attribute called href. Now, these tags and the attributes of these tags are standardized. So what I mean standardized, this is a language universally accepted by all people. So there is an organization that has a bunch of experts from different big companies and government organizations and so on. They kind of meet together and define these standards, and they agree on them and they publish them. and all the browsers will take those standards and implement them in the browser. Yeah? Sorry?
So they can be supported.
Yes, they can be supported. So the only way to make this universal and it can work on any browser, we need to agree on this. So HTML is standard language. All browsers agree on this standard and they implement it. So here there is no magic. We just need to learn the main tags that come with HTML. One of the main tags is the A tag. It allows us to create a link, and it takes the address as a parameter, and it takes the actual text, we put it inside the element. So we open the A element, and then we close it. This is how we open it, and this is how we close it using the slash. Is clear? Okay. In here, I'm doing another tag, which is how to show an image within the page. So to show an image, which tag do I use? IMG tag. And then I supply to it the main parameter the main attribute I supply to it is the source. This is the source from where the image is coming from. And optionally, if this image doesn't exist, at least I will get some text instead of the image. So for example, if I put here 2, which this image does not exist in that location, if I refresh here, you see here, at least I get this alternative text if the image is absent. So that's basically what this alternative text is all about. But if the image is there, the alternative text, I can show it, I can still see it when I put my cursor over this.
It can be replaced by internal image.
Sorry?
It can be replaced by an image stored in the web store. Instead of the
No, let us not confuse, just to make it clear. WebStorm is an editor, is a tool for us to write our code. We can use Notepad, we can use whatever. Okay. Now, these images could be local on the same folder as the page, or subfolder within that folder of the page, or it could be online, somewhere in the internet. So what I mean by this, I can take this image and I can store it on the same location as the page. So for example, let me just see where this page is at. So I can store it here, okay? So I copy this location and I'll save this logo there. I'll save it in the basic tags. So in here, this is an absolute, we call this an absolute URL. It's a full URL, full address. But if I want to refer to the local one, all I do, I just put the name of the file.
No, I mean now instead of replacing this, can we keep the website and as well as this? We can put the path of the image as well.
Yeah.
So
Not for.
if the link fails, we have a replacement.
No, to do that, you have to do it by script. In here, if the page is not there, you get the alternative text. Sorry, if the image is not there, you get the alternative. The text you put in alt attributes. Only supports text, yes. Only supports text. But the scenario is like in real life, you will put the page after you test it, you make sure all the static, these are static content. Static content must be there. It's not realistic to ship an application without it.
Sometimes the image, the website where you get the image fails after a long time.
I see what you mean, okay. Yes, if you have such scenario, it could be safer to have your own, to put it with your content. So you refer to it locally, similar to what we did here. Now, if I go back there, hopefully, I still get the same image. But this one is coming from the local folder, not from the QU website. Okay? So let's move on. So far we have seen 2 tags. the anchor tag to create links, the image tag to show images on the page, and I can put these things. I can put them in a container, in a div container, if I wish. Okay, let me just move on a little bit. So I already showed you here. I can have a header 1, header 2, header 3. Yes, please.
Just one question. The
Yes.
previous image.
Yeah.
Can you change it back to absolute?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. How does it take? Like, it goes to the Q website.
Yeah.
And it takes Q main logo.
Yes.
Right. But you have to know the name of that picture in the QU website.
Yes.
To take it to your webpage.
Yes, of course. You see here, it's a full URL.
So you can access any picture from any webpage?
Yes,
in this way?
yes, you can, of course. But you have to be careful with copyrights, depending what you're trying to do. Because in here, we're just doing demos. But in real life, yes, you can. Like basically the page, the image tag, you can give it any address on the web, and it will display it for you. But if it is your page, and you are using other people's images, you might be problematic if you are misusing them. But yes, technically you can, of course. Okay, the other common tags that you will use is the headers. You know, similar as I explained, when you write a document, you might have multiple headers, header 1, 2, 3, 4. So same thing here, header 1, header 2, header 3. So we have H1, H2, H3, and this is how they are rendered. You see header 1 is bigger. This is the default behavior of the browser. Header 1 is much bigger, header 2 is smaller in size and intensity, and header 3.
Same with Word files.
Sorry?
Same with Word files.
Yes, this is the default behavior. This is the default behavior, which we can change this behavior using CSS. Later on, if I want header 1 to be blue and to be a bit smaller than this, I can do that using CSS. But this is out of the box. This is the default behavior coming from Chrome browser. This is how they implemented H1. Okay, paragraphs. Paragraphs, you put them in P. You open P tag, and then you put P, okay? Now, visually, a div and a paragraph are exactly the same. A div and a paragraph are exactly the same. And from the browser perspective, it doesn't care whether you use a div or you use a paragraph. But as a developer or as a page writer, when do you use div? When should you use a paragraph?
Paragraph when you have a lot of text to insert, and then when you have other contents, images, other stuff that you need in JavaScript.
Okay, close, yes. Both of them you can access through JavaScript. In fact, through JavaScript, you can access any element of the page. Yes, please, Ali.
Like you said, div is like a container. Maybe you want to refer to it later on.
Okay.
You can do it easily instead of P.
P, you can also refer to it later on. Yes. Anything, as I said, anything, I can give it an ID. Later we will see this, of course, P1, and I can refer to it. I can give this an ID and can refer to it from JavaScript and hide it or increase its font. Yes, please.
The div block is basically used to contain things that I want to define them for my own sake.
Okay.
How I use it to put things together, either it's form, paragraph, whatever. I can give it a class. I can, for example, if I want to have multiple things, multiple paragraphs, and I want to start them together,
Yeah.
give them a class. That's how I will give this styling and thesis to all these all at once. So that's
Very
how
good.
you use div blocks to manage your own work.
Okay.
Your website doesn't really care as much.
Yes. What about paragraph?
Paragraph is for text. You can get an ID. You can do it alone.
Yeah.
As I said, it's for you if you want to group on multiple things together.
Okay. So, the simple answer is, paragraphs that we know in the real world. We all know what a paragraph is. So, if you are referring to a paragraph that we know in the real world, just a piece of content that communicates some idea, you can put it in a P. So, paragraph refers to paragraphs that we know in the real world. But if you just want to group things together, it's not necessarily a paragraph, then you use a div. So paragraph is a paragraph that we all know. We break down an article or a piece of text into paragraphs to make it easy for us to grasp and understand and read. So the concept of a paragraph, if you want to put it into your HTML document, you use P. While div, you use div if you want to just group elements, not necessarily paragraphs. It could be images, tables, links, whatever they might be. Yes? So a div is just a container. It can contain anything. While a paragraph is a piece of content, textual content, that has the same meaning as a paragraph that we know in plain English. Now, the browser does not care. It is up to you as developer, but you should try to use the tags that are more meaningful. If you are referring to a piece of text as a paragraph, use P. If your intention is just to put together a couple of elements together as one unit, you use div. Yes? Okay. Now, there is another important HTML tags that we might use often is ordered lists. This is OL stands for ordered list. You will have here 1, 2, 3, ordered, 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. This is a list item, and this is like a bullet. Here, I am using unordered lists. Will be a bullet point, and here it's an ordered list. You will get numbers 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so you can see here. This one is an ordered list, and this one is unordered list. This is how we do this in HTML. Now, this is the default behave, what the browser will do to display them by default. But you can change this behave using CSS. For example, if you want this to be ABC instead of 1, 2, 3, or the Roman numbers 1, 2, 3, yes, you can change the style using CSS.
From the parameter itself? Does it have a type or something?
Even if you have, this is a very good question. Thank you very much. Even if HTML gives you some attributes to change the format, don't use them. Okay? Because basically, every piece of the puzzle that we will be covering in this course, if they like for example the formatting, you should use CSS. Don't use HTML to control the formatting. Even if the HTML sometimes has some elements, but these are for backward compatibility. That's the old style you should never use anymore, but it's still there in HTML to make it backward compatible with old pages. Yeah? But the new pages that you develop, any formatting should go into CSS, not in HTML, even if there are attributes to control this. Okay? For example, let me just show you a small example. Sorry, if you don't mind, I will just show you a small example. So in here, in HTML, there is something called strong. This will make it bold, yes?
Even has color and font.
Yes. You see here? So if I come back here, refresh this page, you can see this one is bold. But this, you should try not to never use. Although HTML has this tag, never use this tag. Because HTML is getting into the role of CSS. We shouldn't do that. And I will explain why this is very important. So use HTML basically for these capabilities and only these capabilities. Any other capabilities you might come across, ignore them. This is what you should use HTML for. Define the structure of the page, collect input using forms, tables, and showing images, audio, video. That's it. And if you have advanced scenarios, you can draw things in a canvas. Other features, you just ignore them. Especially to do with formatting, you should give the formatting and the presentation to CSS, don't do it in HTML. Okay. Yes, please.
ID attribute, I can use it after any tag I want? Or
As an attribute, no, any tag. So we will see this when we start covering CSS and JavaScript. We will see the importance of having this ID. So for example, here ID, my list. I can grab this element from the JavaScript and hide it. Maybe hide it, or make it bold, or make it red, okay, dynamically. Okay. So how can I go and grab this element from the page? Using its ID, attribute. We will see this later on. But for now, don't worry too much about it. Is clear? So far is clear? Okay, so ordered list and ordered list. This is not very important, but just be aware of it. The new HTML5 has this definition list. Basically, definition list, you will have a keyword and its definition. A keyword and its definition. So it's a definition list. This is a term and its definition. Term and its definition. It's not very common. We might not use it often, but it gives you something like this. The term and its definition.
It's actually literal to what it does.
Sorry?
I mean, it's actually using it literally for definitions.
Yes.
Which is
So
not that easy.
HTML, the idea here is that
No, I get the idea.
In HTML5, they try to make things more semantically meaningful, to allow plugins in the browser, to allow more smart browsing, okay? You can discover, for example, paragraph, if you want to extract text from, only the important text from the page, if you mark all there are tools out there that can remove all the non-essential stuff. You just want to concentrate on the text. So such markup, if you use paragraphs, for example, instead of divs, you are helping such tools to pick up the correct elements from the page. Okay? So what I mean by this, the more, if you have the luxury and the time, the more you use carefully selected tags, the better. Yeah? So in this scenario, if you have this scenario where you have a term and its definition, of course you can use a table, for example, to do so, to display such information. But if you use this definition list, will be much better. Okay? All right. Any questions so far? Is clear? Yes, please.
At the very end, there is the tag body.
Yeah.
So in every web page, I can only have one body.
Yes.
And have multiple.
One body. So have a look. So I can collapse this and you can see. So basically in any HTML page, I have two major parts, the head and the body, and only one of them. Only one instance of that tag. I cannot have multiple heads or multiple bodies. Now, you might put whatever if you wish, but it's not the correct way. By the way, the browsers are the most tolerant pieces of software out there. You can throw at them anything, they will do their best to show the page. But it's not a correct like HTML page. But the browser will still try to display it, even if you have multiple bodies. But it doesn't make a lot of sense. HTML is one HTML tag, within it, a head and a body. Okay? And you can also put this declaration. It's just kind of being nice to the browser and saying, oh, by the way, this document is an HTML document. How do you tell the browser, by the way, this is an HTML document? By doing this, doc type HTML.
I think that's be capital.
No, not necessarily. No. Like the standard way of, you can put this capital, anything you can put capital, but it's better to just put lowercase. It's much easier to read. Okay? But this is optional, of course, the browser does not. It is a helpful hint that the browser is knowing what you throw in at it, whether it's an XML document or HTML document or an image or a video, whatever it might be. But the browser will work it out, even if you don't put that. But it's better to put it, okay? All right, so this is the basic idea. The second thing I want to show you is the layout. So here is an example of layout. Let me just first, okay. This is an example layout. We will see a much more sophisticated layout later on. So typically this is what you find. You find a header. There is some navigation here. And there is the content of the page, and there is some footer. Okay? So I can structure my page using these HTML tags to define the logical structure of the page. So I have here header. Within the header, I have one H1 and then a navigation. Within a navigation, I have a couple of links. Yeah? Then I have a table. Then I have some content. So content here, most developers, they use a div. But you can also, instead of a div, you use article. No problem, either a div or an article. If you use article, will be, of course, much, much better because you are telling the browser and telling other tools that might be making use of this HTML that this is the core of my page. This is the main content of my page. You can put it inside an article. And then you have here a footer, and there is an unordered list. Okay. All right, so let me show you another example here. This is another example. Have a look. So what I have here, this is my header and my navigation, and this is my main body of the page. This is some footer, and this is an aside, some content that I put on the side. Now, these layouts that you see, the physical layouts, the way it looks, it is controlled by CSS. But the logical structure, the way I divided it, it is HTML. Okay? So let me show you how the HTML looks like. So the first thing I have here is the header. But by the way, it is very common to have the navigation inside the header. I think this will look much nicer. And by the way, indenting this is very important to show the structure of the page. So I have a head. In the head, I have some kind of head, H1, and then the navigation. And the navigation is a list, unordered list. You know, unordered lists, by default, it should be shown as bullet points, dots, yes? But in my page, it is shown as horizontally, one beside the other, okay? So who controls this presentation and formatting is the CSS. So the page says, this is my navigation, these are the elements of my navigation, but the look and feel is controlled by CSS. But that we will cover later on. The CSS that does all the magic is in this file. Don't worry too much about it. We will see it in much more details later on. Okay. Then I have this aside. Sorry, I just quickly finish this and then I'll take questions. Then I have this aside, which I see here on the right side. Okay, as a list. But this is the default behave. I didn't change this behave through CSS. This is the default behave. Each list item is a bullet point. Then I have here a section. This is the main body of the page. I could put it in an article, then a section if I wish. I could put if I have many sections, I can group them in an article. See here, this is the section. I can put them in an article, and then followed by the footer. Yeah? So you can see the HTML is defining the structure of the page, the logical structure of the page, and then CSS comes and put them physically, define the physical layout. For example, let me just show you. In this CSS, although we will cover it in much more details, I am saying whenever you see an unordered list inside the navigation element, remove the bullet point. You see here, list style type, instead of being a bullet, you just say none. There is no, basically there is no bullet point. Now, just to show you another one, the side, you can see here the side. Whenever you see a side element, float it to the right. Put it to the right side of the page. Yeah? And the footer, whenever you see a footer, make it in the center. Make it centered in the page. So the formatting, as you can see, is controlled by CSS, while the logical structure is defined in HTML. Yes, please, you had a question?
You can only have one CSS for a web page, or you can have...
You can have multiple. We will see this later. Yes. Yes. Like in HTML page, it can refer to multiple CSS files and multiple JavaScript files. We will see this in much more details later on. Okay, I think I will let you go. Sorry, I already took a long time. So inshallah, next time I will quickly cover tables, how to display data in tables, and more importantly, how to use forms to collect input from users. These are the main skills that we will see in this course, and then you will practice them in the first lab. Okay, thank you very much. I will see you next time.